The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick of Firearm Mentor, your host, and I met Mike Barham from Galco Holsters. Mike, welcome to the show. I'd love to talk Galco Holsters with you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Poke around online just like everyone else does. And I want the listeners to understand that very important, the website for Galco Holsters is Galco, Galco, gunleather.com. There's another company out there also called Galco. They
make electronics.
That's right. They make electronics. So we'll repeat this again throughout the show. Mike, tell us about your origin story. How did you get involved in the firearms business? How did you get involved with Galco? Take it away.
I grew up in southern New England. My father was a cop and a National Guard officer, so I sort of grew up around guns. I served in the Army for 11 years, including a deployment in Afghanistan. And I've been to a ton of upper-tier shooting schools like Gunsight Academy, Tactical Response, SADA-U, some others. I moved out to Arizona in 2003, got hired by Galco. I've been with Galco ever since.
Tell us about Galco's history as a company.
Galco was founded in the Chicago area in 1969 by Richard Gallagher. Back then, it was sort of a general purpose leather shop. It was called the famous Jackass Leather Company. And Mr. Gallagher made things, it was the late 60s. So he made kind of a lot of hippie stuff, everything from leather bracelets to leather pants. But one day, a Chicago police officer came to his shop and asked him to make a shoulder holster. And Mr. Gallagher said, come back in a few weeks. I'll try to put something together for you. And Mr. Gallagher did a bunch of research, reading old books and things like this, and came up with the horizontal shoulder holster that eventually became known as the Jackass rig. The Chicago officer loved the design, started wearing it, and suddenly Mr. Gallagher had a line out the door of Chicago police officers who wanted that horizontal type shoulder holster. And that was really where everything took off. Mr. Gallagher went full-time into the holster business. Back then, like I said, it was called the famous Jackass Leather Company. And he did business under that name until 1980. And that was when he decided to rename the company as Galco. The Jackass thing was even then becoming a little bit politically incorrect. The Great American Leather Company, and very few people know that.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. In 1983, he decided to move the company to Phoenix. Obviously, the gun laws, business climate are more favorable in Arizona, but also the physical climate helps with holster production. The oils used in our holsters dry much faster out in the arid desert than they did in Chicago. And to this day, everything is made in our facility in Phoenix.
For the listeners, if you've never heard of Galco, you have seen Galco. They have bet their holsters really prominently were in the 1980s Miami Vice TV show, but also in the Expendables, Die Hard, Face Off, Total Recall, 8mm, Snake Eyes, Con Air, GoldenEye. Name a movie, and there's probably a Galco holster in it. How do you interact with Hollywood? Do they just buy your holsters and feature them? Is there a promotion type thing when companies have, Pepsi pays a movie company?
It's called product placement.
So how does that all work? I don't know.
Galco has a really long history with Hollywood. Our products have been used in movies and TV going back to at least 1981, when a character in the old James Caan movie Thief wore one of our shoulder holsters. Of course, then we hit it big, like you mentioned, with Miami Vice, and you really can't ask for better free advertising than your holster being worn by the main character of TV's most popular drama for, 7 years, I think. After that, we pretty much became a staple and a go-to for prop handlers in Hollywood. And actually, some very popular actors whose names you would recognize ask for our products by name for their movies and shows. And I have great relationships with a lot of the big prop houses and the entertainment industry armorers. The way it works with quote unquote product placement is sometimes we do provide holsters to movie and TV productions for free. Sometimes we do have to charge for them. It really depends on our costs and the exposure we think the holster will get in a given movie or show. Like the Expendables rig that we made for Sylvester Stallone, for example, was very expensive to create. So it was completely custom from the ground up. So we charged for that. But that worked out great, though. I mean, the movie was a big hit. Literally millions of people saw our work on the silver screen. So that was outstanding. Again, though, it really does vary depending on the production, who is starring, and it's hard to predict, of course, but how big a hit is the movie likely to be.
You might not know this. I don't know if you do. How does someone become a movie armorer?
I'm going to punt on that one and refer you to my very good friend, a guy named Rock Galati, who has done armor duty on dozens, maybe hundreds of big name movies. Think John Wick, the Matrix series, stuff like that. Also one of the coolest guys I've ever met, but I don't really know the backstory there or how one becomes a Hollywood armorer.
You mentioned you custom made a rig for Sly.
Yeah.
When you do that in the movies, is that product then later available for purchase from by the general public?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, if somebody really wanted to pay us the $10,000 it costs to build that Expendables rig, we would make it for them. And we've also done, you mentioned Face Off, for example,
right.
that double 1911 smaller back rig that Nicolas Cage wore in that movie. We can recreate that through our custom shop. But the very oddball, weird stuff that we're sometimes asked to create for movies, we typically do not offer to the general public. And the reason for that is building something for the controlled environment of Hollywood is one thing. Doing the same thing as a daily carry defensive type holster, the two are often not the same thing.
So you mentioned small of back. What's your opinion of the small of back holsters?
We actually discontinued all our small of back and middle of back holsters, I want to say maybe 10 years ago. And the reason for that is that the whole industry has really moved away from that type of carry. You see appendix carry being promoted much more often than something like small of back carry. And honestly, small of back carry is not the best way to carry a gun. In fact, I think personally it's one of the worst. Well, it's a slow draw. It can be a borderline dangerous draw. The gun is actually very hard to conceal there. I mean, people do it because they see it in Hollywood productions, getting back to that a little bit. But for most people, something on the strong side, on the hip or in the appendix carry is going to be much, much better than small of back.
Thank you for validating me. That's what I tell people. And if someone falls, they're going to get a piece of
it's
steel.
Right on your spine. If you slip on the ice and you fall, you're likely to injure your spine. I mean, there are just many, many factors that mitigate against smaller back carry. And then that's why we discontinued them years ago.
So retention is also an issue. I believe that's what the FBI agent had when it fell out and he was breakdancing.
Yes, there is that.
I'm going to be kind of goofy right now. You should have made a holster for Magnum PI. He kept sticking his 1911 in his pants. That's a big no-no. I mean,
it's funny that you bring up Magnum PI because Tom Selleck has been a friend of Galco for many, many years. And we supplied holsters for him when he trained at Gunsight many times, but years ago. Tom Selleck's favorite holster in our line was our Yaki slide, which is a very minimalist belt slide holster. That was what Tom Selleck liked.
We talked about leather oils curing, maybe that's not the right word, but drying faster in the arid the arid climate. Yeah. Does Galco work in any other mediums like Kydex or nylon?
Yeah, absolutely. We use a very broad variety of materials. It really just depends on what we're trying to create and for what purpose. Our most common material is premium steer hide, and we compete for the top 2% of steer hide available from U.S. tanneries. And we use that in our professional grade gear. On the other end of the spectrum, we use a material called center cut steer hide, and that's for our budget friendly carry light line. And we work in horsehide for some of our very high-end premium products. We have a long history with Kydex, going all the way back to the early 90s. And we make many Kydex holsters and accessories. On top of that, we also use leather, other leathers like Latigo and bridal leather. And that's more for our sporting collection, our sporting products. And then we use nylon and injected and molded polymers where it's appropriate. We even have our own in-house foundry where we cast belt buckles and other hardware. In leather, there is sort of a pyramid. There are different grades. And like I said, we compete with companies, not just holster companies. We compete with shoemakers and upholstery companies. But we do have to compete for that top 2% of U.S. tanned leather.
What's the warranty on Galco holsters?
We have a pretty liberal satisfaction guarantee. Everybody at Galco is a shooter, and most of us carry guns on a daily basis. So we realize that not every holster works for every person. If you buy a holster directly from Galco, you have 2 weeks to try it. And if you don't care for it, and again, we're shooters, we understand that, what works for me may not work for you. You have 2 weeks to return or exchange it. And that's not a problem at all. In terms of warranties and things like that, because we use premium materials and our craftsmen are all very experienced, we very, very seldom run into quality or durability issues. So those are handled more on a case-by-case basis through our customer service department.
Okay, that's a phenomenal comment that you made about trying it for 2 weeks. A lot of people, myself included, buy holsters and then don't like them, and then they just sit on a shelf somewhere. So that's from a consumer.
Yeah, everybody has that bucket or tub of holsters, right?
Yes. I mean, I use them for classes, so I bring them in. It's not they don't go to waste. I might have someone that has a Beretta 92. I happen to have a holster for it because I bought one and didn't care for it, so it's in that pile. So there's a positive to being an instructor and having a variety. We already asked you about custom holsters. What is a Galco VIP?
So the VIP program, that is something we offer that gives end users access to special deals, promos, sometimes a sneak peek of a new product, things like that. It was spearheaded by our digital marketing manager, Zach, and it has actually been a very nice success for us.
Is there a fee or you just sign up?
No, you just sign up. Just need an email and a phone number for text.
Sweet. Guess who's going to sign up right after this call? Awesome. Well,
I
love the product.
Zach very happy.
Yeah, I don't recommend crap. Galco's one of the things I recommend because
Thank you. You obviously have excellent taste.
Thank you. My wife will agree with you. Tell us about the blog. Galco has a blog. What type of things does it cover?
Largely concealed carry. It is, at this point, a bit of an archival blog. I don't know that we've updated it very recently, but there's a lot of good information there. Again, largely oriented toward concealed carry. In fact, you mentioned SOB carry, and I think Zach, our marketing manager, wrote an article about SOB carry there and why it's not a good idea.
Okay, cool.
But I encourage everyone to read through it. Like I said, it is very concealed carry oriented, and there is a lot of good information there. A lot of people from Galco have contributed to that. And like I said, we're all shooters and gun carriers, so there's a great deal of knowledge there.
Once again, for everyone, the website is galcogunleather.com. Feel free to check that out. Tell us about the YouTube channel.
We've had a YouTube channel for many, many years. You can find it at Galco Holsters on YouTube. Just do a quick search there. And we get a large number of views there. We have everything from instructional videos to product spotlights there. I will warn your listeners, though, that I'm in a lot of those videos, but I really do have a face for radio.
Me too. That's why I'm here.
We've also migrated all our videos over to Rumble. YouTube is growing increasingly anti-gun, as I'm sure you're aware. And I suspect that someday no gun content at all will be allowed there. Because of that, we also have our presence on Rumble, which is much more of a free speech platform than YouTube is at this point.
This is a big question. It's burning a hole in my mind. New guns come out all the time. It seems like every month there's 2 or 3 or 4 outside of the SHOT Show.
Yeah, and that's just Sig Sauer, right?
And that's just Sig Sauer, exactly. And Glock. Glock keeps churning them out.
Yes.
So what goes into the decision to make a new holster? I recently saw a firearm that was really neat. It was a TSAS, so don't judge me because it's a Turkish gun, but it was a Beretta clone that had a tip-up barrel. And I was like, ooh,
yeah, that little 380, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's that clone of the Beretta Cheetah.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think there's, unless you use a universal one, I have not found a holster for. What comes into the decision to make a holster for a new firearm?
I just want to mention that it's funny that you brought up that particular gun, because we just recently did a factory tour with one of the marketing people from Beretta. Oh. She happened to be in the area, and she dropped by, and we gave her a factory tour. And that is her personal carry gun. And she's like, hey, why don't you guys make holsters for this? And after some discussion and things like that, we actually got the TSAS version in and the Beretta, and we're working on holster fits for those right now. Just a funny coincidence. This was literally a couple of weeks ago. As far as how we decide to make holsters for a given gun, it's really a combination of things. How big is the gun company? What kind of reach and popularity do they have? How successful have their previous designs been? How quickly can they get us a sample gun? We need typically an operational gun. We need to make sure that the holster doesn't interfere with the various levers and switches and things like this on a gun. So we do need an operational gun most of the time rather than something like a mold. And we have to ask ourselves, how good do we think the gun is? Do we think it's going to be popular? And that might sound a little fishy, I guess, but I remember holding the Smith & Wesson M&P when it very first came out and telling my boss, this is a good gun. This thing is going to sell. And we've sold hundreds of thousands of holsters for M&Ps since then. So it really is a combination of things. Again, the manufacturer's history and our personal judgments, guesses about whether or not the gun is going to sell.
Does a gun manufacturer ever contact you and say, hey, we're coming out with this new gun. We want to have a holster ready for deployment with the gun? Does that ever happen, or is that just me being fantasy?
It's actually fairly common. Some gun makers are better than others at getting us advanced copies of guns without naming names or anything. But we're always happy to work with gun manufacturers on fits. And we actually do sell directly to several of the larger gun makers who then resell our holsters on their websites. Right. But yeah, it is fairly common. I mean, especially for a concealed carry gun, people are more likely to buy your gun if holsters are readily available.
Right. So you have to market to the end user customer, and then you have to market, and I don't know if you use distributors, but at least to the retail stores. Can you go into a little bit on the different strategies on marketing to the stores so they carry your products and to the public so they're aware of your products?
Galco's been around for over 50 years. So we already have an extensive network of literally hundreds of stocking dealers. And we have various dealer incentive programs to help both online and brick and mortar sellers. On the consumer side, we do a variety of online and print advertising. We have a robust social media presence. We've talked about YouTube, but we also have, Facebook and Instagram and things like that. We have some great brand ambassadors. Champion shooters Max Michel and Michelle Viscuzzi help spread our message to consumers. And we work very closely with members of the outdoor and shooting media. On the dealer distributor side, our sales team attends the big distributor shows like NASGW, Sports Inc., shows like that. And then we attend SHOT Show every year, which is always great. I'm the world's biggest gun show, and I get to go to that every year with the rest of the team, which is awesome. And then we go to the NRA and USCCA expos to talk to the end users. And of course, that's where you and I met earlier this month.
What are some of the new products that Galco has recently introduced?
Because of the massive influx of new shooters in 2020 through 2022, sales were enormous in those years. There were also, as you mentioned, a huge number of new gun introductions, especially in that sort of compact and subcompact 9mm category. So we spent a lot of time playing catch up after that. By that, I mean adding new fits to existing designs rather than creating entirely new products. We did bring out our Cloud series of inside the waistband holsters, the King Tuck and Quick Tuck Cloud designs, which are the most comfortable inside the waistband holsters I've ever worn. And I've been a gun carrier for going on 30 years now. We also brought out our High Ready chest rig, and that's more for outdoor carry versus concealed carry. And then our very cool Big Iron, which is a Western style holster, but it's updated for the modern shooter. And that last one is more of an outdoor carry type holster versus concealed carry. So a little bit of everything. As far as new products coming out, we're definitely leaning into that trend toward carry optics on concealed carry guns. We're leaning into that really hard. So you'll be seeing a lot of new things in that area. But other than that, I'm not really at liberty to say a whole lot.
Oh, of course not. I totally get it. Do you ever test market holsters or get people to try to use them? And
what happens with beta or field testing is, like I mentioned, at Galco, we have tremendous number of very experienced shooters. I mean, we have former law enforcement, we have veterans like me, and just a lot of guys who have been carrying for years and years and years and who are hunters and things like that. So we pretty much keep our beta and field testing in-house. Okay. But there are occasional exceptions to that in kind of specialized circumstances. Some other people will do it for us. And the biggest recent example is that we built a competition holster for our brand ambassador, Michelle Viscuzzi. Okay. And she has been banging that around at very high level matches and things like that. And that may be something that we end up doing as a custom item if people are interested in getting that competition holster that she's been using and testing for us.
Terrific. I'm going to go back to something you said earlier when you said that the Jackass holster Mr. Gallagher came up with the Jackass holster for a Chicago cop. Was horizontal shoulder holsters a thing, or was that that he came up with?
And he was actually building on some things that he had learned in the massive amount of research that he had done. Okay. The Jackass was not the very first horizontal holster, but I like to think that Mr. Gallagher really perfected that design. But it was based on some earlier designs from the 1920s, 1930s. Okay.
What are your most popular holsters today?
Well, inside the waistband holsters, just as a general category, are definitely the best sellers. Our Stow and Go, Tuck and Go, the King Tuck series have been absolutely killing it over the last 10 years. I mean, we've literally sold hundreds of thousands of copies of those three basic holsters. As far as belt holsters, they're definitely a close second inside the waistband. Our Combat Master, Fletch, and Concealable line all sell extremely well, as does our Corbis, our sort of flagship Kydex holster. And don't sleep on shoulder and ankle holsters either. You know, our flagship Miami Classic shoulder holster series, that's sort of the descendant of the original Jackass design, still sells extremely well. And our ankle glove, kind of surprising to me, perennially in our top 10 bestsellers, year in, year out for the last 25 years.
I want to ask you about shoulder holster, and maybe I'm being a little bit personal, but that's okay. I have a couple of them, and I used to be 120 pounds heavier, and they were never comfortable because I'd have to really reach over to grab the gun. How do larger individuals wear a shoulder holster? Are there, like you can get a seatbelt extension for a car or an airplane. Are there like leather extenders so that, a big dude or big dudette can comfortably wear one?
Well, first of all, congratulations on the weight loss. That's awesome. To give a little background, the harnesses we provide with our regular production holster system, shoulder holster systems, will fit a chest up to 54 inches. Okay. So already that's a pretty big person. Right. But we do offer an extra large harness as well that will accommodate chests all the way up to 72 inches.
Wow. Okay.
You got to kill two cows to get straps that long, but
My upper back super tenses up, and it's painful. Is there any tips to just being relaxed when you have, and it's involuntary, I can't really control it.
Understood. It's interesting you say that because I mentioned that I was deployed in Afghanistan for a year, and I actually wore a Galco shoulder holster for that entire year when I was on the base, not when I was outside the wire. But I found it extremely comfortable and a very easy way to keep all my weapons together on the base. I had my Beretta 92, the M9, 2 spare magazines, and a Surefire flashlight on the offside, and it worked great for me. I thought it was extremely comfortable. Actually, just wearing it around the base ended up selling a bunch of Galco holsters. It was kind of funny.
You didn't work for Galco at the time, did you? Did you work for them at the time?
Yeah, I was in the Army National Guard in the Arizona's 1st of the 158 Infantry, and so I took a 1-year sabbatical from Galco, and went overseas for, well, it's actually 15 months. Galco was 100% supportive of my service, and I love the company for that. We talked earlier about the YouTube channel, and so I will refer you to our YouTube channel. We have a 12-minute video that will teach you how to properly assemble and adjust and use a shoulder holster. And so anybody who has questions about shoulder holsters should definitely go watch that video. Again, it does star me and my partner, Dave Starrin, both of whom have, like I said, a face for radio.
I love the sense of humor. Thank you. Thank you so much. So also Galco's website, once again, is galcogunleather.com. Mike, I want to thank you. I want to take a moment to thank you for your service in the military. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure my listeners are very like-minded. I'm sure they appreciate it as well.
No problem. Thanks for paying my bills.
You're welcome. What final thoughts can you share regarding holsters, concealed carry, open carry, products that you have that maybe I didn't ask you about?
For a final thought, I'd just like to say that 30 years ago, this guy named Mark Moritz established the first rule of gunfighting, which is have a gun.
Right.
People should carry their guns as much as they possibly can. This country has seen some ugly times in the last few years, and it honestly doesn't look like things are going to get much better anytime soon. Just like you wouldn't wear the same shoes to a job interview, the gym, hiking, church, you might need different holsters to stay armed all the time. A lot of that depends on your clothes, the climate where you live, things like that. At Galco, we call it a holster wardrobe. And I encourage everyone who goes lawfully armed to look at owning a variety of holsters so that they can stay armed and observe that first rule of gunfighting. Have a gun.
Folks, that concludes our interview with Mike from Galco Holsters. Again, their website is galcogunleather.com. If you type in that on the YouTube search bar, you can get their fantastic videos, which I am going to subscribe to and educate myself on the shoulder holsters, because if you haven't figured out, I'm very interested in them. I just didn't know what I didn't know. So, Mike, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to our listeners today.
It's been my pleasure.
The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.